My family uninvited me from our yacht cruise, saying, "This cruise is for successful family members only." I showed up anyway and said, "Well, it's my yacht." Their jaws dropped when they realized I owned the company they'd chartered. Can you imagine being told you're not successful enough for your own family celebration? That's exactly what happened to me, Malene Parker, when I received a text from my mother that would change everything between us forever. But what my status-obsessed Boston family didn't know was that the luxury yacht they'd chartered for their exclusive, winners-only cruise was actually mine. My name is Malene Parker, and at 32 I discovered that my family's definition of success was so narrow it couldn't accommodate the $12.3 million maritime empire I'd built from scratch. We're talking about Boston elites who measure human worth exclusively through bank statements and job titles at Fortune 500 companies. Our annual family cruise had always been their grand showcase of achievements until the morning I received that devastating text. "Malene, the family has decided this year's summer cruise will be a celebration of success. Given your continued career choices working at that marina, we feel it would be uncomfortable for everyone if you attended. This cruise is for successful family members only. I'm sure you understand. We'll see you at Thanksgiving instead." 7 years of building maritime luxury experiences from a single 30-foot yacht into an 8-vessel fleet serving celebrities and royalty, and they still thought I worked as a dockhand. The irony was breathtaking. They had chartered Azure Dream, my $2.8 million flagship yacht, to celebrate their superiority while excluding the person who actually owned it. Growing up in Beacon Hill meant living in a world where your portfolio mattered more than your personality. Our sprawling colonial home felt more like a financial museum than a family sanctuary. Every dinner conversation revolved around stock options and quarterly earnings, never dreams or passions. Success was defined by 3 metrics: Ivy League education, corporate executive position, and marriage into equal or greater wealth. My father, Richard Parker, built his fortune through investment banking deals that prioritized profit over everything else. His philosophy was brutally simple. Money doesn't just talk, Malene. It commands respect. Those without it are simply background noise in this world. He measured every relationship, including with his children, by potential return on investment. My mother, Eleanor, had perfected social climbing into an art form. Her calendar was perpetually booked with charity galas and country club functions where networking was the primary sport. She trained me from childhood to sit with perfect posture, speak with measured words, and always maintain appearances. "A lady never shows weakness in public," she'd instruct while applying her signature red lipstick. And Parker women are ladies above all else. James, my older brother, had absorbed every lesson our parents taught about success. At 36, he was their crowning achievement: Harvard MBA, corner office at Goldman Sachs, and a salary that funded his constant bragging. "This deal I closed last week," he'd begin at every family gathering, scanning the room to ensure everyone was listening, "brought in 8 figures before lunch on Tuesday." My sister Allison took the marriage route to family approval. At 29, she'd transformed herself into the perfect trophy wife after marrying Bradley Hamilton, heir to a hotel empire. Her Instagram showcased designer wardrobes and European vacations that our mother shared proudly with her social circle. "Bradley surprised me with another diamond bracelet," she'd announce, extending her wrist for obligatory admiration. "He says a woman like me deserves only the best." I tried desperately to fit their mold for years. I attended Phillips Academy, joined the right clubs, and enrolled in business school exactly as planned. My internships at blue-chip financial institutions earned temporary approval, particularly from my father, who saw this as following in his footsteps. But something inside me withered with each passing day in those sterile office buildings. The fluorescent lighting drained not just color from my skin, but life from my spirit. By 25, I couldn't maintain the charade anymore. The panic attacks in bathroom stalls between meetings became daily occurrences. Sunday night dread extended backward into entire weekends until there was no relief. My body was screaming signals my mind couldn't ignore. "I'm leaving finance," I announced at a family dinner 7 years ago, my voice steadier than my hands. "I've accepted a position at Harborview Marina." The silence stretched endlessly before erupting into predictable responses. "Working at a boat dock? Is this some kind of quarter-life crisis joke?" James laughed without bothering to hide his disdain. "Malene, think about what this will look like to everyone," my mother hissed, already calculating social damage. My father's disappointment manifested as dismissal. "This phase will pass. When reality sets in the first time you need money, you'll be back asking for a reference letter." Only Allison offered faint support, though her words dripped with condescension. "Well, I think it's brave to try something different. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business after all." What they didn't understand was that my boat dock job was actually the first strategic move in a carefully crafted business plan. I'd spent 6 months researching the luxury yacht charter industry before making my decision, identifying market gaps and building industry relationships. Within 2 years, I leveraged my business degree and trust fund inheritance to secure investors for my first yacht purchase. That modest 30-foot vessel, which I named First Light, became the cornerstone of what would eventually grow into maritime luxury experiences. Those early days tested every ounce of determination I possessed. I worked 18-hour days learning the business from deck to bridge. Mornings began before sunrise preparing vessels for clients. Afternoons involved marketing and building industry connections. Evenings required cleaning and maintenance alongside the small crew I could barely afford. "You won't last 3 months," James had predicted during a particularly tense family dinner. "The novelty will wear off when you realize how much work it is to play with boats all day." What my brother failed to understand was that hard work doesn't feel like sacrifice when you're building something you believe in. Yes, my hands developed calluses unfamiliar to Parker women. Yes, I collapsed into bed exhausted most nights. But for the first time in my life, I woke up eager to face each day. By 30, I had transformed that single boat operation into a fleet of 8 high-end vessels, serving elite clients along the eastern seaboard. I kept my success deliberately quiet, operating through business managers and maintaining separation from my family name. The company grew through reputation and excellence, rather than social connections. When Maritime Luxury acquired Azure Dream, a stunning 200-foot luxury yacht with every imaginable amenity, it became our flagship vessel. The $2.8 million purchase made waves in industry publications, but remained unknown to my family, who had long since stopped asking about my little boat job. Each family gathering, I endured their condescension with private knowledge that my company generated more annual revenue than James's executive position. Each dismissive comment became easier to bear, knowing I had built something meaningful on my own terms. "Still playing with boats, Malene?" my father would ask at holiday dinners. "Something like that," I'd respond, swallowing both pride and truth. The morning that text arrived, I was in my corner office at Maritime Luxury's headquarters in Boston Harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of our vessels bobbing gently in their slips. I was reviewing charter contracts when my phone chimed with what I expected would be my mother's usual forwarded business article. Instead, the words made my coffee turn bitter. "This cruise is for successful family members only." I read the message 3 times, each repetition bringing new waves of emotion. After 20 years of annual cruises, after enduring countless subtle jabs throughout these trips, I wasn't even deemed worthy of invitation. My hands trembled as I set down the phone. Rebecca, my operations director, noticed immediately. "Malene, is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I've been uninvited from my family vacation," I said, the words sounding absurd. Apparently, I'm not successful enough to qualify for attendance. Rebecca's expression shifted from concern to indignation. Your family doesn't know you own one of the most prestigious yacht charter companies on the East Coast? They think I work at a marina, maybe as a manager by now if I'm lucky. I never corrected them. The admission sounded ridiculous even to me. I called Allison to hear the justification directly. We've chartered this amazing vessel called Azure Dream for a Bahamas cruise, she explained with artificial brightness. Dad pulled strings to get it since it's usually booked years in advance for celebrities and royalty. Bradley's parents are joining us along with some of James's business associates. The conversations will be about investments and expansions. You'd feel out of place. The irony was perfect. They had chartered my flagship yacht, the very symbol of success they believed I lacked, to celebrate their superiority without me. After ending the call, I felt the full weight of exclusion crash down. Years of seeking approval, of quietly proving myself while hoping for recognition, culminated in this casual dismissal. I closed my office door and allowed myself 5 minutes of tears before Taylor Foster, my best friend since college and marketing director, entered without waiting for response. Rebecca told me what happened, she said. Your family chartered Azure Dream without knowing it's yours. I nodded, wiping away tears. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Taylor's expression shifted from sympathy to calculation. This is actually perfect. Being able to show up on your own yacht and watch their faces when they realize who really owns it, that's perfect. I don't know, Taylor. I've kept my success quiet for a reason. I wanted them to value me for who I am, not what I own. And how's that working out? Taylor asked. They've had 7 years to see your worth beyond financial metrics, and instead they're uninviting you from a family tradition to save face with in-laws and business associates. Her words stung because they were true. I had given my family every opportunity to recognize happiness and passion as valid success measures. Instead, they doubled down on their narrow definition to the point of excluding me entirely. What would I even say? Surprise, the boat belongs to your failure, daughter? Taylor leaned forward. You say nothing at first. Show up as the owner conducting a routine quality check. Let the revelation happen naturally. They need this reality check, Malene, not just for your sake, but for theirs. The idea took root, watered by years of accumulated hurt. Perhaps some lessons could only be learned through direct experience rather than gentle nudging. I called Captain Marcus Miller, who had been with Maritime Luxury since the beginning and was scheduled to command Azure Dream for the Parker charter. Captain Miller, I need to discuss the Parker family charter next week. Yes, the Parker party. 7-day Bahamas cruise departing next Thursday. Is there a problem with arrangements, Miss Parker? No problem, but there's a situation you should know about. The clients are actually my family, and they don't know I own the company or yacht. A pause. I see. Would you prefer we maintain that confidentiality during their charter? Actually, I'll be joining the cruise, not as a guest initially, but as the owner conducting a quality check. I'd like the crew briefed accordingly, but no one should inform my family before I arrive. Understood, Miss Parker. When should we expect you? I'll board approximately 2 hours after they've settled in. Enough time for them to feel comfortable, but before departure. For 7 years, I had built a business while carrying the weight of family dismissal. Perhaps it was finally time to set down that burden and stand in the full light of what I had accomplished. The week leading up to the charter became careful balance of business operations and personal preparation. I selected an outfit that struck perfect balance: crisp white linen pants, navy silk blouse, and gold accessories that whispered rather than shouted wealth, completed by Sperry boat shoes, practical yet perfect for the setting. At the office, I met with my executive team to ensure smooth operations during my absence. Maritime Luxury had grown to 40 full-time employees and dozens of contracted crew members across multiple vessels. I'll be accessible by phone for emergencies, I explained to the group gathered in our conference room, but Rebecca will handle day-to-day decisions while I'm away. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked Natalie from finance, who knew something of my complicated family dynamics. A week trapped on a boat with them after such a revelation could be intense. "That's exactly why I need to do it," I replied. "We've all been playing roles for too long. It's time for authenticity, whatever the outcome." The meeting with Azure Dream's crew was conducted via video call the day before departure. Captain Miller had already briefed them, but I wanted to address them personally. "This is not about embarrassing anyone," I emphasized to the attentive faces on screen. "Treat all guests with our standard excellence. The only difference is that when I arrive, you'll acknowledge me as owner rather than family member joining late." "Understood, Miss Parker," replied Sophia, the chief stewardess. "We'll handle the situation with discretion." The morning of departure brought crystalline blue skies and perfect sailing conditions. I drove to our private marina where several vessels were docked, then continued to Liberty Harbor Marina, where my family would board what they believed was a chartered vessel. I arrived 30 minutes after their scheduled boarding time, parking in the executive section reserved for yacht owners and management. From my vantage point, I could see Azure Dream docked majestically at the end of the pier. At 200 feet, she dominated the marina, her sleek white hull gleaming in afternoon sun. Through my sunglasses, I observed my family boarding. Even from distance, their behavior told a familiar story. My father moved with confident stride of someone accustomed to ownership, though he was merely a client. My mother paused at the gangway to survey surroundings, likely assessing who might be watching their grand entrance. James directed dock hands regarding luggage with unnecessary authority, while Allison posed for photos at the yacht entrance. I watched as they were greeted by Sophia and crew, noting how my father barely acknowledged the steward who took his bag, while my mother immediately began what appeared to be instructions before even fully boarding. The scene confirmed what I knew from countless client reports. Wealthy clients often revealed true character in how they treated service staff. After allowing 20 minutes for them to settle, I began my approach. I had deliberately dressed to balance professionalism with casual elegance expected of someone in the yachting world. My white linen pants and navy silk blouse moved gently in the marina breeze as I walked confidently down the dock toward Azure Dream. As I reached the security checkpoint at the gangway base, I was stopped by Thomas, our security officer, playing his role perfectly. "Afternoon, ma'am. This is a private vessel. May I help you?" he asked, his expression professionally neutral, though his eyes held recognition. "I'm here to speak with Captain Miller," I replied, loud enough for anyone on the lower deck to hear. Before Thomas could respond, I saw my mother appear at the railing above, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock to something resembling anger when she recognized me. She quickly descended to the gangway entrance, intercepting me before I could board. "Malene!" she hissed, maintaining her social smile though her eyes were cold. "What are you doing here? I was very clear this trip is for successful family only." The familiar pain of her dismissal flared briefly before being extinguished by knowledge of what was about to unfold. Before I could respond, Captain Miller appeared behind her. "Miss Parker," he said with respectful nod, "we weren't expecting you until later. Everything is prepared for your inspection." My mother's perfectly maintained composure faltered. "You know my daughter?" "Of course," Captain Miller replied with practiced ease. "Miss Parker is our employer." "There must be some mistake," my mother insisted, her voice rising slightly. "We chartered this yacht through maritime luxury experiences." I reached into my pocket and withdrew my set of keys, including the master key to Azure Dream's bridge, each featuring the company's distinctive logo. "Well, Mother," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, "it is my yacht. I believe I'm entitled to be here." The silence stretched for eternity. My mother's mouth opened and closed without producing sound, a rare moment of speechlessness for Eleanor Parker. Behind her, I could see my father approaching, his expression transitioning from annoyance to confusion. "What's happening here?" he demanded, looking between Captain Miller and myself. Miss Parker owns maritime luxury experiences, Captain Miller explained professionally. Azure Dream is the flagship vessel of her fleet. My father's jaw physically dropped, a cartoon reaction I would have found amusing under different circumstances. James appeared next, followed by Allison and Bradley, all drawn by the commotion. "Malene owns this?" Allison blurted, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing to encompass the entire yacht. "Not just this yacht," Captain Miller continued, apparently enjoying the reveal more than his professional demeanor suggested. "Miss Parker owns the entire charter company, one of the most successful on the eastern seaboard, I might add." I stepped past my still speechless mother onto the deck of my vessel, feeling familiar pride as my shoes touched the teak decking I had personally selected during Azure Dream's last renovation. "The maritime industry has been good to me," I said, unable to resist the understatement. "Captain Miller, I'd like to greet the rest of the crew before we depart." "Of course, Miss Parker." They're assembled in the main salon as requested. As I moved toward the yacht's interior, my family parted before me like the Red Sea, their expressions ranging from my father's calculating reassessment to James's naked disbelief to Allison's complex mix of embarrassment and admiration. My mother recovered enough to attempt damage control, falling into step beside me. "Malene, darling, why didn't you tell us about all this? Of course, we would have been proud." The transparent pivot made me pause. I turned to face her directly, aware that the entire family was watching our exchange. "Would you have been, Mother? Because less than 48 hours ago, you informed me I wasn't successful enough to join this cruise. Nothing about me had changed from the person you've been dismissing for 7 years. The only difference now is that your definition of success has been satisfied." Color rose in her cheeks. "That's not fair. We simply didn't understand the scope of your hobby." "My company," I corrected firmly, "which employs 40 full-time staff and generates annual revenue that would surprise you. And no, I didn't tell you because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I own. Clearly, that was asking too much." Without waiting for her response, I continued into the main salon where the crew stood at attention. Each member greeted me by name with genuine respect, a stark contrast to the conditional acceptance I had sought from my family for decades. "Thank you all for preparing Azure Dream to our standards," I addressed them. "This charter is unusual given my relationship to the clients, but I expect the same excellence we always provide. You're representing not just me, but everyone at Maritime Luxury." As the crew dispersed to their duties, I turned to find my entire family had followed and now stood awkwardly around the salon's perimeter. The power dynamic had visibly shifted, leaving them uncertain how to proceed in this new reality where I was not the family disappointment, but the owner of the very symbol of luxury they had used to exclude me. "I've had the Azure Suite prepared for you," I informed them, referring to the yacht's premium stateroom, "unless you'd prefer I take other accommodations during the cruise." "You're staying?" my father asked, finding his voice at last. "It is my yacht," I replied simply, "and apparently I'm successful enough to qualify for attendance now." The first dinner aboard Azure Dream was an exercise in social navigation more complex than any business negotiation I had ever conducted. I chose to arrive last to the dining salon, a reversal of my usual punctuality that served a strategic purpose. When I entered, my family was already seated around the custom mahogany table I had commissioned from a master craftsman the previous year. Conversation halted abruptly as I took the seat at the head of the table, a position my father had undoubtedly assumed would be his. Chef Marcel had prepared his signature seafood feast featuring locally sourced lobster and seasonal vegetables. The irony wasn't lost on me that this menu, which I had approved months ago as Azure Dream's welcome dinner, was now being served to the very people who thought I couldn't distinguish between yacht maintenance and yacht ownership. "This food is exquisite," my mother offered after several minutes of awkward silence. You must be very hands-on with your business, Malene." The olive branch was predictable. Eleanor Parker's attempt to reestablish comfortable footing after her worldview had been disrupted. "I believe in knowing every aspect of my operation," I replied, taking a sip of the Sancerre I had selected for the evening, from engine specifications to linen thread counts. "That explains why everything feels so cohesive," Allison chimed in, her tone suggesting she was making a profound observation about design principles. "The aesthetic is so you, now that I think about it." "The aesthetic is intentional luxury with practical functionality," I corrected gently. "But yes, I was involved in every design decision." My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "How many vessels in your fleet currently?" The question was typical Richard Parker, immediately assessing the scale of business to assign it proper value in his mental hierarchy. "We operate 8 luxury yachts ranging from 60 to 200 feet, with 2 more under construction in Rhode Island," I answered, watching his expression shift as he calculated potential valuation. "Always had a good head for business," he declared with newfound approval. "Must be the Parker genes." I'd say it was despite the Parker expectations, not because of them, I countered, unwilling to allow him to retroactively claim credit for success he had actively discouraged. James, who had been sullen since the revelation, attempted to reassert his status. 8 vessels is impressive for a boutique operation. Have you considered scaling more aggressively? With proper capital investment and strategic partnerships, you could double that within 18 months. His suggestion was exactly what I would have expected from someone with his background, prioritizing rapid growth over sustainable operations. "We're expanding at a pace that allows us to maintain our quality standards," I explained. "Luxury experiences depend on attention to detail that doesn't scale easily. Our clients choose us specifically because we aren't a mass-market operation." The evening continued with my family members adjusting to this new reality in their own ways. My father attempted to establish common ground through business discussions. My mother oscillated between pride in my accomplishments and discomfort at having her social hierarchy disrupted. James maintained a competitive edge, asking questions designed to identify weaknesses in my business model. Allison seemed genuinely curious about my journey, though her questions focused primarily on glamorous aspects rather than years of hard work. When I finally retired to my stateroom that night, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely liberated. For 7 years, I had compartmentalized my life, presenting different versions of myself to my family and business world. Now those worlds had collided, forcing an integration I had both feared and needed. The confrontation had achieved its purpose. My family could no longer dismiss me as their unsuccessful daughter, but more importantly, I had finally stopped hiding my light to make others comfortable with their narrow definitions of success. As Azure Dream gently rocked with harbor movements, I prepared for what would undoubtedly be a week of continued adjustments and revelations. The forecast called for smooth sailing ahead, both literally and figuratively, as my family began to see me, really see me, for the first time in 7 years. The annual Parker Family Cruise had always been about showcasing success. This year, for the first time, the real success story was finally being told.